never stop. We can send a loud message to perpetrators. If you choose to do this, you will never be out again. You will die in prison. We can, by our actions, show our children that we value their lives. They are our greatest resource. They are the treasure of our hearts. They are the future of our nation. I implore you to contact the representatives of your state and ask them to pass Jones Law. It has taken 40 years to get this far, and we can't afford to wait any longer. There will be a monument for Joan placed by the train station in Hillsdale. It will have a butterfly garden around it. It will celebrate her life and commemorate the laws which protect children that have been passed as a result of her murder. I hope that everyone who sees it when they come home from work will say a quiet thank you or say a prayer for Rosemary. Then I hope that they will go home and hug their children tightly. I hope that they will remember that change in our society for the better often comes at a hefty price. Joan D'Alessandro and her family paid the price. I'm just asking that you stand with them and make the sacrifice worth it. Godspeed, Joan. I love you, and I promise that I will always remember. Until we meet again.
White butterfly shine bright in the morning light before the sun is high. White butterfly shine bright by the afternoon. She like a smiling fire. She's a joy, she's my friend, and I know I gentle is her sound, strong, sincere, selfless way. It feels a green and orange flower trees. White butterflies
This was Joan's favorite song, Ode to Joy. this on? Can you hear me?
Should be on.
Okay. Now, okay. I'm going to talk a little, and then John, who's my son, he's my fifth child. He was born after Joan died, and so was Michael. Michael isn't here. And John is the vice president of the Joan Foundation. And he's the guy that brought me here tonight. So he's going to, after he has like packets for each of you, and he'll explain what's in each of the what's in the packet, okay? So we have, don't mind the fan, don't mind a little feel fast. You know, I have myasthenia all my adult life, so you just, you know, like, there are different things you work with. And sometimes the stuffy room is like, you know, a little bit touchy. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to you, Dr. Kujian, for asking me to come to speak tonight. This is a first-time experience for me where I am speaking at a university. And it's very interesting because I went for my master's at Fordham University, and I was born in the Bronx. Or almost went for it. Then I got married. I got married like, you know, early 20s, so I didn't complete it. And then welcome to all of you. You know, thank you for coming. And I hope that when you leave, you'll have something that you could share with other people that will help the other people, but will help you first, okay? And then if you have any questions, you know, you could ask me after. And if you all afterwards, you will see, you'll get some information about my address, my phone number. We have the foundation at the house where Joan lived. I'm still at the same house. And you could, you know, you can call me if you wish, and you're welcome to come to visit. You know, you're welcome to come to visit. We can make the time. So now, what I just want to go into is, you see, Joan was delivering cookies to my neighbor across the street, and he was a teacher. He was a chemistry teacher at the high school in one of the, like in Tappan, New York, which isn't too far from where we live in Hillsdale, New Jersey. And what happened was, it was on Holy Thursday. You would understand this. Holy Thursday was the day that it happened. And she went there, and she said, you know, I'll be right back. There were the 2 boxes of cookies in the foyer. We have like a bi-level house. And she never came back. He had raped her, and he had murdered her. And he was like, it was like the worst thing that could happen to a human being. It was like, just think of what terrorists do to people. And I mean, this was happening to Joan, even maybe more. And she was just a little innocent 7.5-year-old girl. So how could you ever forget Joan? How could you ever sit in your pain? Because she is alive today. She's alive in a different way. She's alive with her spirit. And she wanted me to be her voice. So now I'm her voice. But also, you see, she was found on Easter Sunday. So I took all this as a message of hope. A message in what I believe in my faith is that there's a hope, there's a message of hope in that. So that was, and I thought of that maybe like about 10 days after Joan died. And I was so thankful that I believed that, and I still believe it, and that brought a lot of hope. So what happened was that because of this historic case, remember this was taking place in 73, okay? In 73. Okay, Joan, you want to hold it? Somebody hold this.
Okay. Yeah.
so in 73, I mean, children were going all over the place in the neighborhood. I mean, Joan and her sister could only go 4 blocks, because she has a sister a year older. They could only go 4 blocks. Others would go into towns. I mean, they were all day, they were out delivering, selling cookies, because they wanted to get the prize. So what happened is, after this happened to Joan, rules changed in the Girl Scouts, rules changed in Boy Scouts, rules changed in fundraisers. It became historic. And the way parents were like starting to raise their children, they were even sometimes become paranoid. And I raised 4 children after Joan died, but I did not believe in being paranoid, because you cannot control everything. And you have to let children enjoy being children too, but still be watchful. And so society changed. And to this day, I mean, it's 41 years later, her case is as strong as ever, maybe even stronger, because it means so much in society and changes, okay? So now, remember, there was this hope, this message of hope. Now, what I thought of was that with this message of hope, what could it be? So first 20 years, there was no message that was coming into my heart and my mind. But in 93, when I got the call, very shocking, a shocking call, not expecting it, that Joan's killer would be coming up for parole. And if I didn't, I asked them, do I have to fight this time? He said yes. He says, because there's a good chance he could come out. Because you see, Joan's killer just got 14 years at that time, which meant life. And in 1993, that was 20 years. So he had spent his life. He had spent the time, they said 14, it was like 6 years over it. So then I remember it being very difficult. It was very difficult. And I remember, remember at this time, even in 73, there was no help for victims of crime. I mean, you were on your own. So at that time, my psychiatrist was God. And he still is. So I wanted to mention that, because some of the things that you have to go through. But the first hour, I just remember just sobbing. I was crying. And then I said, okay, that's enough. Now I gotta get to work. So what do you think I did? What do you think I did? We started the movement. We had a vigil. 1,500 people came. We had a petition drive. We had a green ribbon drive. Green because Joan's favorite color is green. Green became a symbol, a motto, the green ribbon. Remember Joan today, so tomorrow's children will be safe. And we had a petition drive, a letter drive. And with all that, and then the media came in. I started to connect with the media. And you have to remember, I had no idea of any of this. I remember at the vigil, this first time I really spoke, to a large crowd. So what was happening was, which might happen in your lives, when you have to deal with something very hard, certain things come out of you that you had that you didn't know you had. And you use those wonderful gifts that you didn't know you had. So out of everything that's negative, no matter what you have in your life, there's always something good that could come out of it. Just think about that. Even if you're feeling emotional and all, you still have your mind to think. And that's what happens. And that's what happened to me. And that's the way I look at it to this day, right, John?
Yeah.
Right? You know, like, say, no, I'm not to be that, it's not easy, things are hard, not to act like, you know, you're self-righteous or something, but just think about it, even inside you, and that can make you feel more peaceful. So then what happened was, there were so many appeals because with the fight we put up, he did not come out, okay? But he appealed, he had monies, and that's what made me go for the Justice of Victims Law, because the statute of limitation in New Jersey was only 2 years. Now the Justice of Victims Law, the statute of limitations in New Jersey there's no more statute. Even a case from 50 years ago, a victim can sue the criminal. If you see he's writing a book or has some money, payments of money, you know, if you found out about it, that money goes to the victim, and that victim could use it maybe for their foundation or for their family that needs help. So that's what happened. Now, in that time with the appeals, there was a lot of testifying. I testified in, let's see, that was 93, and 98, and 2008. And to testify means that you have to relive everything, or else you're not going to be able to explain the information, what you went through, to the parole board chairperson and the parole board people. So you really have to be, you know, very, very into it. And that's very, very, very difficult, very difficult. John and Michael did it the last time. And you know, I saw the pain that they were going through, and they were understanding that, wow, this is tough, this is tough. Because remember, they'd never met Joan, so their journey was different, you see, and also, like, you know, affected in many different ways. So what happened is it was time for change. This is very important. And there, see, you go with that? That's one of the things I started with Jones Law. In fact, that was the first flyer. It was time, because in '94, that's when I started with the law, when we started the movement. And you see, what the law does, there would be no appeals. And there would not be, families wouldn't have to testify. And it could even eliminate maybe a perpetrator, you know, murdering a child because they'll know about this law and they want to die in prison. Because this is what you do. You will die in prison with this law. So this law is as much justice as you can get. Like on this earth, as much justice. Without having hatred, without having, because I don't have that. But you see the way I do it. I do it this way. Not having this, like, being so bitter. Because then with that, all the good that you have will be taken away. And I would not let that happen to me. I would not be a victim. I would not let anybody that is so evil, you know, ever take who I am away. So therefore, I could be her voice. Therefore, I could do what I'm doing now. Therefore, I could enjoy the things I enjoy, you know? But to not have it, that's you know, I could explain to you how I did it sometime. It's something, I'm very lucky to have my faith. I'm very lucky, you know, a lot of things. So now, the first law was Jones Law, and that came in '97. And then we had other laws, which John will explain after. There were 2 more laws in New York State, in your state, and then we had one on the federal level. And I tell you the truth, the New York State one was hard to get through because this was the first mandatory life like a mandatory sentencing law in ever in New York State, is in Jones Law. So we had the foundation, we started the foundation, that's where we help the children, the vulnerable children, learn about, good things, have fun, go on excursions, learn about careers with working dogs. And then these children get to understand about something positive in life, and hopefully they will not go into the negative. Because that's one of the things that's very important, I think, to do, is always be aware of helping people see, and children especially, seeing that, you care for them. And this way they won't have so much anger in them, and violence won't be something that maybe they'll want to get close to. So that'll make it a safer society. Now, you wonder why the White Butterfly song before, and the White Butterfly song was written, a musician wrote it, and that was for Joan. And why the White Butterfly? Because when I went to the site where Joan was found, and that was in Harriman State Park, and that park, that's in the mountains. And what happened is I hadn't gone there for 8 years, the second time I went. Of course, for 8 years I had been sick with myasthenia, but still I was doing things from bed or when I had energy. And what happened is I'm coming up the mountain because Joan's body was put almost like in a sepulcher type rock, 2 rocks with an opening, almost looking like a sepulcher. An opening in a boulder, and behind the boulder, on an April day, it was cloudy, there was this little white thing flying, and I thought it was like a moth, because I never knew there were white butterflies. I don't know, and they called them cabbage whites, white butterflies, and there was this white butterfly, and I go, oh my gosh, look at that. She's so happy that I'm here, and that I'm feeling better, and that I can do the work, I do the mission, and be her voice. And that's how the White Butterfly became, that's how it became known. So that's why we have now a White Butterfly sculpture and garden. And that was just started 2013, just finished this year. And the reason why I started that in the movement was because the 40th anniversary was in 2013. So now we have a sculpture and garden, and it's right there at the train station in Hillsdale, right in the front of it. And it's all about child safety. The big picture is child safety awareness. And you will see, John will show you the words on it after that are on it. And you'll see the white butterfly carved in it, and you'll see this beautiful garden. And it was, done by many, and the foundation, is responsible for it. Like, all the money involved in it. And then this white butterfly over here, right? This past Holy Thursday, this was in my garden. This white butterfly, what do you think of that? Remember, she died on Holy Thursday? And this is the year the sculpture and garden was celebrated. So a lot of signs, a lot of messages. You need to look at them and listen to them. But isn't that amazing? I'm coming down the front steps, and there it was. And then John took a picture. And that was Holy Thursday. Then, at the site where Joan was found, last year in 2013 it was not easy to get a sculpture and garden. You had to deal with the politicians. You had to deal with the town. You had to deal with the people. A lot of people didn't want it. They didn't want it. They wanted to kind of just hide. They wanted their town not to hide. Let's hide Joan. Let's not think of that. Let's not bring that up, because that's not a good subject. We don't want awareness about sexual assault awareness in our town. We don't want our town to be remembered like that. They were very concerned about their image. So I had to work with that. But in working with that, we had to work with, what I found is that you listen to the people. I listen, right? And then I respond. And then if I need to respond like real strong, like firm, but I never will try to, and it's not easy sometimes, because sometimes you really feel like pulling your hair. But I found out if you respect the people, respect the people, respect their opinion, and then definitely I respect myself. But it's like a respect situation, even though you don't agree, even though you're thinking that way, even though you're judging me, and so forth, okay? And I think Joan would have had that way a lot too, because I saw it in her 7 years. So it worked. And you're going for something that's, beyond you, it's like a bigger picture. So over here, someone went and they were taking pictures at the site. They look at your photo, they're looking at the picture, and this was on it. And right here is where Joan's head was. And her head was up, like, looking towards the sky. And look what was over it. Look what was coming here. And that's what was in the picture. So I like to think of this as Joan showing us what she looks like on this earth. And she gave this was on someone's photo. Our white butterfly. There was just a book now that's going to be a Caldecott Award winner, probably. Draw. It's called Draw. It's a children's book, and the illustrator that did it and who did the whole book dedicated to. It says dedicated to Joan, a white butterfly in the sky. A white butterfly. So there's a lot of people get very inspired by her story, by her spirit, and I just want to tell you that, in order for things to change, you need to bring it out in the open. Don't be afraid. And because I see it in my neighborhood, new neighbors, when they found out that it was me that was across the street, they went, oh, like that. And I knew I'd never get their address anymore. They wouldn't bother with me anymore, because it happened so many times. Even with the older neighbors, when I started doing this work. But the thing is, don't let that stop you, because in bringing out something that's so important for social justice in society, you need to bring awareness, you need to be open, and you need to be involved. So I would say to you, and leave you now with, I want you to do some thinking, and in your life, from this day, right now, what would you do to make society better, to get involved in social justice, and how would you get involved, or what would you do? And that's what I leave you with, because you could make a big difference. And all of us together, that's how we make society better. Because there is hope in society. And there is good in society. And just show it. keep on showing it. And then we'll have a strong society. And thank you.
Thank you. Want to speak, John?
Yeah. I need to pass these out. Hi, I'm John. John D'Alessandro. I'm the youngest brother of Joan. I was born after she was murdered. And I just wanted to, first of all, thank you again for having us. I just want to go over the handing out packets to each of you right now. I just wanted to go through the packet to tell you what you had. Right over here, I'm just playing some pictures from our recent events. So first of all, you got the little white butterfly, and my mom just told you the significance of the white butterfly. Then you have the green ribbon, which is said remember Joan today, so tomorrow's children will be safe. That was Joan's favorite color. And my mom started that campaign to keep Joan's killer in prison. So part of that was handing out green ribbons. Then you have a picture of Joan, her Girl Scout picture, and that became like a famous picture throughout the campaign. Then we have our information card on the back. It says some of the foundation's accomplishments. Then you have a picture of each of the different phases of the Joan D'Alessandro White Butterfly Sculpture Garden, and you see that we just added lights in October.
Lights were in September.
In September, and then you have the wording on the back of the sculpture, and so that's there. It's a little summary. Then you have synopsis.
I know the words. Just go over the laws.
The law.
Tell them about the law that we're going for now.
Yeah. Okay, so you have that's the last. You have Jones Law, New Jersey, April 3rd, 1997. Jones Law, Federal, October 30th, 1998. Justice for Victims Law, that was the law that eliminated statute of limitation for suing murderers. And Jones Law, New York, was September 15th, 2004. So yeah, so then the last sheet of your paper is about the expansion of Jones Law we are going for in New Jersey. That the law will the law will apply to minors under the age of 18, because the current Jones Law protects children under 14. So we want to extend that to 18, so that older children, if they were murdered, they would also get the murderer would also get life without parole. And then we have this synopsis, and this is a sort of a more detailed story of the whole case that you can go through for more of the dates and details. Just a couple other things. This is just some of our things that are going to be happening next year. FBI profiler, New York Times bestseller. He's a true crime writer, John Douglas. His book is coming out. He worked on the case as part of the investigation into whether he should be paroled. And he's going to have 100 pages or so of Joan's story are going to be in his next book, which should be coming out next year. We have so far we have a walkathon planned in April, which will be in town near us in Hillsdale. It'll be actually Wooddale Park. and Jones Joy party in September. We just had one in November. It's like a dinner party. Dr. Takushian came to it. Then we have, Mom talked about the illustrator dedicating the book. Oh, Scott Garrett made a statement on the floor of Congress about the creation of the White Butterfly Garden. He did this last September, and he talked about my mother's advocate work. And so then I just wanted two things. We have petitions. If people want to sign for the expansion of Jones Law, which I talked about, it will include all minors. And then I have an address book. If you wanted to give us your email, we have like email lists when we have events. And then the thing to do is to stay in touch with us on the jonesjoy.org is our website, and also we have a Jones Joy Facebook page, which is our up to date. So I'm going to put these petitions out and an address book.
This is our guest book for the events.
Yeah.
What's that?
You want to pass it around?
Yeah. Or you could write your email also on the petition or the address book, either way, if you want to be part of our
If you have any questions on the packet.
questions.
Yes, if you have any questions on the packet.
Okay.
I like this.
Yeah. So does anyone have any questions about what was handed to you, or any questions in general?
Do you find the politicians' support is remaining strong, or is it waning, unfortunately, because there's been years of distance between you and that?
Well, you know, you always have different politicians coming in, and as far as the legislators now that we're asking, I mean, they're interested. I mean, because this is a big case too. They like to have their name attached to it. But a lot of times, what they do is like you have to always keep on focusing them, because they're into so many areas. And then what happens is that these politicians, you know, a lot of them are not doing it for the right reason. So what you need to do is just work with them and just remember something that they did that was good. Focus on that, so it keeps you steady and you could work with these people. So therefore, even though it's like 20 years, that's when the movement started, there's no problem with it. Politicians are still very interested. Very interested.
Rosemary, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned years of feeling like you're in shock, or months in which God was your psychiatrist. Did you go through traditional therapy
No,
after?
no.
We hear about grief counseling, and I always
No, they
wondered
didn't
if
have
it
any
worked.
grief counseling.
Okay.
They didn't. Well, you know, they had psychologists and therapists. I mean, we're not talking about like we were talking about 40 years ago. But no, I went to God was my psychiatrist. That's it.
And then once you got a chance to go to the parole, that was 20 years later. Did you have to confront the killer?
No,
Is
I
he in
never
the room?
did. No, never did have to confront him. seeing his pictures, I mean, you saw it, it's hard, but that's, he was like, he went to Montclair College, University, and, he was engaged too.
Have you been in touch with other parents? And those of us who are parents, it's unimaginable, and we tend to think that you could never even get out of bed again. And yet, people to whom things like this happen, they do. I mean, do you speak to other people?
Well, I think that you don't know sometimes about yourself until you're in a trying situation. And then, like I was talking about your capabilities come out that you didn't know. I mean, I had gotten leadership awards in college, but still never just did what I did. I wasn't thinking leader, no leader, But yet those capabilities are, because, I mean, you can't be worried about being judged and all, You just have to do what you believe in, and for the betterment of society, I mean, it starts with Joan, but it's a big picture, it's about all people.
Do you feel that she's aware of what you've done, and does that matter?
My child?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. In fact, today when we were passing the sculpture was all lit up. To me, it looked like it was happy. And I never felt that the sculpture felt happy, looked happy. So, she knew what we were doing. But you get to know her. You'll get to know her more. And like I said, you could always come and talk to me and stuff, and I could show you the foundation. And she might do something to you, really affect you. Because she was amazing. She was different. She was just different.
Have other survivors of these type of tragedies come to you to ask how they get involved in their own
Sure, a
foundation?
lot of people. Sure.
Have you spoken ever to Carol McCarthy about this?
No,
This one?
no, I haven't. No. But people come to me all the time. Somebody just wrote to me from California, and they wanted some advice, so I gave them some advice. How to work with media.
You mentioned the Girl Scouts changed their
Their
rules.
rules.
How did they do that?
Well, they changed. What they did is then it's still not good though. What they did was, I mean, children would just go by themselves before, So they said, okay, now you go with an adult, or the adult could be in the street and all. But you will see in the book that's coming out next year, it's called Mind Hunting. You will see in that book what my experience with the Girl Scouts. Because they were staying away from it, It was like Joan didn't exist,
Has that changed over the years? Have the Girl Scouts embraced the cause
How
more?
You know how it changed is because I said to them, it was 30 years, I said, you're ignoring me, you're not taking my calls, this is happening every anniversary, like the 20th, 25th anniversary, 30th anniversary, 35th. We were getting to the 40th. So I said, okay, now we're going to hit the road running. And I said to them, if, you still keep on ignoring this issue, where Joan is, she died on the line of doing community service. And you're just pretending that she's not there. I said, it's time to go to the media and tell them about the Girl Scouts. And then guess what? Guess what? Joan got in the memory book. And everything has been like very, where I've had to almost go and just talk to them, do all kinds of things, but they never came to me. They didn't come to me. But then I had a meeting with them just a short time ago because I wrote a letter to the president, and I was, wanted to see about communication, and then I had a meeting with the person that's the second in command of the Girl Scouts. And you know what I said before I left? Even though they still, you see what's important to them, they still were trying to be a little bit more amenable. And I said to her, and I looked at her in the face, and see, I was trying to get a white butterfly throughout the nation, a safety badge throughout the nation. And, they wouldn't do it. So, and I said to her, so that's what she thought, but I knew the book was going to be coming out, and I did tell them, I was going to say, things in the book, that was the truth, what I went through, and, I didn't have to be secretive. And then I said to her, I respect you. That was the last thing I said to her. And then you know what she did? She said, she started to talk about, the Girl Scouts do this, that, and the other. And then guess what she did? I saw a little tear in her eye. A little tear. And she said, I'm so sorry. And that's the first time I ever heard anything from Girl Scouts. Remember, I had to take the first step. So, it's different than what you think.
Maybe just our two discussants, and then we bring some issues, and then we open it up to larger questions. And we have with us two discussants. Kevin Cook is a journalist and an author. He's written 6 books. Most recently, the Kitty Genovese story about the infamous murder in New York City in 1964. And he'll speak a bit and raise some issues from the journalist's point of view. The second discussant, Dr. Thomas Caffrey, is for 3 decades a forensic psychologist here in Manhattan, right down the street, and past president of the New York State Forensic Psychology Association. And let me invite each of you in turn to speak a bit. And I would like to say a word too afterwards.
Well, I certainly think this is a fascinating case. Okay.
Well, you can
All right.
or you can sit at the seats
Okay.
where we can sit.
So I certainly think this is a fascinating case and a question of how one reacts to such a terrible event in life. And it's interesting from a journalistic standpoint, from a parent standpoint, as I think I've mentioned, you can't imagine that you would ever take another step. And yet, when these things happen to people, they somehow do continue. And to turn something so awful into something positive is the sort of story that I think means a lot to not only to writers like me, but to readers and to parents, to citizens, to everyone. I think it enters legal questions as well. Do we believe in rehabilitation? And this has become an issue in other cases. If someone is never going to get out of jail again, why do we have prisons? Why do we still pretend that rehabilitation is possible? The other question is, are there crimes so heinous, so awful, that person must be put away? If so, why is that person put away? Is it to protect the rest of us, or are we doing some sort of Old Testament punishment? There's a case to be made either way. Dr. Takushi mentioned my research on the Kitty Genovese case, and that had something to do, as Jones' case did as well, with victims' rights. There was a time when it was between the justice system or the injustice system, as it sometimes turns out to be, and criminals and the corrections department. Now, people who are affected, family members, are asked to speak especially before sentencing. I think that's a tremendously healthy thing, not only for the families themselves who feel finally that they can be heard, and I think not to be heard, to be left behind in an event such as this is crime even worse. But if we hear the people who are affected most, who are left behind, that's got to be a positive, I think, and it has only grown since the Genovese case in 1964, since this case in 1973. I hope this is an instance in which we all understand what an important thing that victims' rights movements are, and I'm certainly going to stay in touch with what happens with Jones Joy. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? As some of you might have noticed, I came in at the end of the film. And after having read some materials about Mrs. D'Alessandro, Rosemary, and hearing the steps that she and her family have been taking since the murder, the rape and murder of her daughter, I, like you, was most impressed by the positive steps that they have taken, given what they underwent. First of all, Rosemary has survived as a human being. Many of us would not have, given what happened. She has raised more of a family after Joan's murder. She has confronted her assailant, legally if not personally, by mobilizing herself repeatedly and recalling the events by doing so. She's gone beyond that and helped others whose daughters or sons might be murdered by an assailant like Mr. McGowan, by getting legislation passed, which is no easy matter, in various jurisdictions and repeatedly, never satisfied with this all positive activities, coming and speaking with us, again recalling what happened in doing so, speaking to other groups around New Jersey, New York, the country, creating the garden, creating the sculpture, taking on the town of, was it Hillsdale? Taking on the town of Hillsdale and their efforts to suppress the memory of what happened in Hillsdale. Continuing, as the documents show, to try to improve the legislation. All very positive. What I want to speak to is the ambivalence that is evident in this room, at least what I sensed. This was the positive side, and I think something like this looks very positive. The garden looks it's an attractive garden. The sculpture is tasteful. The flowers are beautiful. The white butterfly is beautiful. And I think that's one side of the ambivalence. The other side is, my feeling when I came in the door was, this is a memorial. This is a memorial to a 7.5-year-old girl. The feeling, first of all, the mood of the students, it was very subdued. I've been in here repeatedly, and this was the most subdued I felt the students to be. You were all very somber. And it was at the end of the film. I did not see the film. The music was somber. I saw placards up here. The way placards are put up for a memorial. So this is the other side of the ambivalence. On the one hand, very positive activities being effected by Rosemary and her family. On the other side, 40 years later, 41 years later, it's still a memorial. And that's what it's about. It's about death. It's about violence and death. And all this legislation, and all these efforts, and all these positive transcending of her feelings, of Rosemary's, of John's, of the others in the family, of other people's. It's because death is such a horrendous thing, especially given the kind of death that Rosemary has experienced. We all know that if someone dies suddenly, the grief is much more profound than if they die gradually. If someone suddenly disappears, unexpectedly, it's a much more powerful grief. That was one element. If they die at the hand of another person, that totally complicates the suddenness of the death. They've died not only by an accident, but by someone's intention. That deepens the grief. Not only that, it's a child's death. We all know that if a child dies of an accident, of prolonged cancer, of diabetes, of other diseases, parents never get over that if a child dies. If that one element is there, that is a child. This is the third element. It's a child, sudden death, death by violence, and it's a child. Number 4, not only was she violently killed by another person, but it was preceded by who knows what, by way of sexual violence. So this memorial that we are participating in 41 years later, maybe if it was 441 years later, it would be somewhat assuaged. But we are here participating in a real memorial. And there's a reason that it's a real memorial. And there's a reason for all the positive efforts because of the severity of what has taken place. So it looks kind of bright and colorful, but it's bright and colorful because of the seriousness of what we're dealing with.
We'll open it up to discussion in a moment. Let me serve as a third discussant. You all have a sheet that says the compendium on top. You may be familiar with Helen Keller, blind, deaf woman, who said this: "The world is full of suffering, but it's also full of the overcoming of suffering." And how we see that so clearly here today. I studied with a forensic psychologist, 1974, Morton Bard, who was a pioneer with victim rights. And he also mentioned very casually one day that people who survive a homicide, that is the families of homicide survivors, not only go through tremendous grief for the reasons that Tom just stated, the suddenness of a death at the hands of a murderer, but they also seem to find a tremendous inner strength, and which transforms them from ordinary people to extraordinary people. If Rosemary's lovely daughter didn't die, she wouldn't be here today. She's a different person today. And on this sheet, you see what Morton Bard talks about. After he spoke in 1974, John Walsh, his son Adam, Candy Lightner, who lost her daughter to a drunk driver. The drunk driving laws today are different because of that one human being. It seems that not only do homicide survivors sometimes find an inner strength, but they also find an external strength by being able to deal with resistant people who don't want to change things. In my mind, the most powerful example of that is the parents of the Pan Am 103 flight, who were upset that somebody, a terrorist, killed their families, their children, coming back from London to Syracuse, New York. And those parents got together and they forced the U.S. government to force Libya to prosecute an individual who turned out to be guilty. And that never would have happened except for those parents. An inner strength and an external strength that accomplished almost what you could call a miracle. The two things I would ask, one is organized resistance. It seems like you meet some natural resistance with politicians, with people who don't want, the Girl Scouts, people don't want to change. I wonder if there's any organized resistance that you also find, maybe from the defense lawyers, the ACLU, people who feel that the laws should not change. And the second question it seems to me that many parents of murdered children suffer alone. Do you have contact with John Walsh, with the groups that about missing and exploited children? Are you part of a larger network that works together as opposed to doing it by yourself?
Well, the Surviving Parents Coalition.
Yes, let me sit down and you take over.
All right.
And please feel free to moderate the discussion if
There
you
is
like.
Surviving Parents Coalition, and that's all parents that have lost a child. And then John, didn't you remember you went to the prosecutor's convention? John Walsh.
Yeah. I just met John Wall. I don't know what to say about it.
Well, it's a big thing, you met
Yeah.
John Walsh.
No, but I was like, what was I saying? Yeah, I met John Walsh. He was nice, so I can't tell you much more. But yeah, Surviving Parents Coalition is a great organization. There's a link on our website for it, and it's sort of a way to they sort of reach out to each other time to time if they need help with an area or they need advice, and they can send stuff around, sort of like a think tank for people that are going through similar experiences.
And you know, it was helpful to me at a certain time when I first went into it, and that was maybe 7 years ago. So this way, I would get ideas from them, and then that would help me. But right now, it's not as firm, kind of like it's more subdued. I mean, it's more quiet. But you know, it used to be really good. Who was the president of it? The case.
Smart. Opposition.
ACLU, we always had trouble.
Yeah, in the 90s
We did.
Like each news story would have some comments from that.
I remember being on television, and there was the one person from the ACLU, and then he was, talking about that, how we have to think of the criminal, we have to think of them more and so forth. And then I would just talk about what we were doing. And then at the end, he stayed quiet. He didn't know what to say. This one I had anyway, unless he was just being, it was an emotional thing for him. And then after when he would leave, he would do his work. But, that's the way it is though. You're always going to have, sometimes in having two different viewpoints, you could learn even more, because then you'll say, well, that really isn't right, and then you'll have creative thinking and think of something else you never would have thought of. So they might help you to think of something else, to work with, with the goal that you're going for. But the defense lawyer, he was there from the beginning when the Gowan family had gotten him, and then after he was disbarred, the one that they had. Yeah. So I don't have too many good experiences with defense lawyers.
Sadly, I just make a comment on the
Yes,
top.
John, you want to come here?
Yeah.
A question for both of you, I guess. Have you found that the heinousness of the crime that you're dealing with, that you're living with, prevents people from talking with you?
Oh, definitely.
They don't know what to say, they
Sure.
avoid you, they
Sure.
don't return your calls.
And other victims have told me that too, that they lost like an older child in their 20s or so, that happening to them. But it happens to me all the time. I mean, on my street, right here in Hillsdale, New Jersey, right? I mean, 3 new neighbors came in, and I would go and say hi to them, and, just be friendly. And in fact, one of them I'm going to give a Christmas present to, and just say, I hope you're enjoying your house, because he's right next to me. But they stay away from me. They stay away.
And you know why?
Yeah. Yeah, they don't want to be thinking about it. They don't want to feel, I don't think they want to feel any sense of responsibility where they might have to say, oh, I might have to help her.
with what she's doing with the law. I might have to, be a little kinder or something. I don't know what the,
What
but,
about, I don't know what to say to her.
yeah, but they see the way I am,
But I think there is an awkwardness that's involved in that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just.
Maybe you're feeling awkward too, all of you.
Because I can just give a little, my younger brother died at a very, not from a tragedy, but died much too young, fairly recently. And just talking to his wife now in the last year, who I used to talk to all the time, I find it awkward. And I want to hit myself afterwards for
Well,
why
you
I
better
did,
hit
because I just want to have that
yourself.
communication.
No, you better hit yourself.
Right, but I think that's the part of the human spirit you have to get over, is that you have to somehow get to that, but it's very, very important that you engage. She just wants a normal interaction with us and the rest of the family, and we're struggling far more than she is right now.
Well, I don't know
to create
if you're,
that.
if you're struggling more, she's struggling a
And
lot.
then in her own way, I mean, just in terms of the interaction, she's
Yeah.
much more open to the interaction
Yeah.
than we are, when she obviously is struggling with far more difficult situations. than we
You know
are.
what I tried to do? I pushed too much, to try to show how comfortable I am, and I engage the person because I want the person to come and feel comfortable about the subject. Because when we do that, that's the healthiest thing you can do. You see? And I could sense if that person is feeling this way, that person is this way, that person is that way. I could sense it.
Well, I would just say what you're doing is extraordinary, because I was a prosecutor for 30 years and saw within our office many people who were victims of violent crimes and lost people. And a lot of people never, ever took the positiveness out of it that you are taking and making something of it. Some of them just never let go of the anger, have gotten into so much trouble in their life since then, because all they are is absorbed and consumed by the act of what happened. And I find it amazing that yourself and people like Carolyn McCarthy on the Long Island Railroad have turned their lives into doing something positive that has really affected society in
We're
an amazing way.
just ordinary, we're people.
And you're
I
people,
just-
but
I just
doing
hope
extraordinary things.
I just hope that, like, it could happen, like, whatever comes in your life, that you can, maybe, if you get a little something from the movement, from the foundation, from me if you wish, that could help you, like, with what you have to contend with. Because some people, they have such revenge, it's not good. It's not good. And all they keep on talking about, I have a friend that call me and talk about her brother was so evil. Ugh, Yeah. So sometimes I'll say the right thing, sometimes I'll just stay away from it, because it's too much. I don't want to hone in on that.
You might think you're feeling the same way about the assailant. That's why she talks that way.
I did tell her that, I know, like, I understand about, like, evil from, on the worst ways you could feel. And I said, if I had all hate and bitterness, I said, I wouldn't even be talking to you. But some people are just so concentrated in that one dimension, in that one thing. And then I don't know, I said something about something good, like really good. And it had to do with this prayer that you say, it's part of the, like, after you say Decade of the Rosary, and it says, God help those in most need of their, of mercy. And then I said to her, what, we all need mercy. Like making a half joke, but just show reality of it too. But all of us, we're not perfect. But when it comes to evil, but evil, like, what happened with Joan, you have to take care of it in different ways and in different things that happen in your life. Sometimes you have to go away from it. just go away from it. And, you know, and don't have hate for people. And this is what I do.
Did the killer express remorse ever, and would
No,
that have mattered?
no,
Say about the
no.
mother.
No, never. The mother, I found out about 6 years ago through my friend's friend, who knew the mother, and she said, I hate Rosemary D'Alessandro because it's because of what she did to send her daughter there. My son is in prison. Now, I never had remorse. No remorse. Nothing. Oh, that's happened, believe me. Yeah. You gotta be strong.
Amazing, such a warped way of thinking over such an innocent act or someone going out.
And I saw her when we were going to go over trial, and they did stop the trial. They didn't have a trial, and I remember going through. I was going to go into the court. I was going into the court, and she was right there, like near the door, and she looked at me with eyes that looked so evil, and as to say, it's you. And then when I went in, the first thing we did when we came into the room was looking to see where I was. And I said, I'm not going to cry. I'm sure. I'm sure. I have children in my early 20s. And they're, and I said, I'm not crying. And don't you think he looked straight at me? And when he looked at me, I just looked at him. Yeah. And after that, I don't know why they didn't go on to trial, but the defense lawyer said they weren't going to, he was going to say what he did. Who knows?
Yes.
I mean, evil is like, how it is evil out there. I know a lot of things that he did.
Question over there.
Have you received support from your church family?
Can we go back to the microphone?
From the church?
Yeah.
Not really, no.
That's not just about that.
No, not the church. What, don't you
I know.
say?
What am I?
He's telling me what to say, so.
What are you saying? Well, no, I think at the time, I think from what I understand, sort of I have a unique perspective in that I'm part of it, but I'm also not a part of the original. I was born in '82, so this happened in '73. So I'm sort of, finding out about it later. I think what was also unique in at that time, I don't think society had the same kind of, there wasn't the internet, the national media reaction. I mean, there was stories in the Daily News, but it sort of went away after a couple of days. It wasn't, I don't know, like you see the big cases that happen now, like there was the Megan's Law, there was, like it happened instantaneous. It was sort of like, I think it's better. Actually, the community sort of does things, like sort of collapses and helps, and the new town, you saw the response to, that was more children, but the new town response, and I think at that time it sort of, Mom was a little more isolated in that way, in that the support she had to galvanize for herself in the 90s. And I think, I think that was like the second, that for me, the 93 parole eligibility, that was like the tragedy, I don't know if you call it the tragedy in my life, where that was like, it all like became real for me, because I think that was like the second injustice sort of in this case, that there were parole eligibilities, and that's why it's important as a society that we, think of victims, because if we allow laws and such to go on, then it has a real effect on people's lives. I don't know.
You had your hand up?
Oh, that's Mary has.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm half of the couple that Rosemary alluded to, I'm happy to go, and I'm also from New Jersey. And I commend Rosemary and her son to lead this effort. They're actually been very instrumental in my own personal tragedy and helping us trying to get additional laws passed in New Jersey to protect young people. Not necessarily young people under 16, because there are laws in place. It's just a matter of enforcing those laws to protect them. But there's a new generation of victims, and those are kids between 16 and 25, and they are becoming. You see it always in the paper about kids that are being manipulated, not just by other adults, but in relationships. They're manipulated from victims. You've seen these kids that are suing their parents, especially in New Jersey, over college tuition. I think everyone should be allowed to go to school, but one girl was actually coerced in doing that by another family. So, and the parents have no recourse. And Rosemary has been instrumental in helping us work on legislation to help families reunite. Because what happens is the system is made to protect the victims. But oftentimes when this happens, the victim becomes, they blame because, oh, you must have done something to cause this to happen to you. And that is not the case. And sometimes the facts and what has happened aren't always clear. Things happen in small pieces. And when you see the whole picture, you'll say, oh my God, look what happened. But that happens over time. We're dealing with my own personal situation when my son, who turned from 17 to 18, over the course of this manipulation, was convinced to leave my home. And basically claimed to be homeless. He claimed to be homeless and moved out of my home, moved with another family. In doing this, he has convinced the Seton Hall University, okay, it's another Catholic university, Seton Hall University, that he is homeless, and he has been supported for 4 years by the university, because in the state of New Jersey, if you claim yourself to be homeless and have no visible means of support, there are laws that protect you. Now, in my son's case, he has a loving family. He has support, both financial and emotional and social support. He had a whole large family, but he has abandoned all of that. And since there are laws that protect student rights, and you guys all know about the student rights laws, that if you don't sign the form, the parents can't see what you're doing, can't see your records. Well, he's done that. He's not allowed us to interact with the university. And the university will protect him till the cows come home. Because they have, as a matter of fact, they've gone so far as to put us on notice, legal notice that we are not being alerted. It's a very informative short brochure. It just gives you a sense of what can happen to you. Sometimes it's an innocent manipulation by even a mate, a classmate. We've encountered people that are on one-on-one relationships, and all of a sudden their personalities change because it's happened slowly over time.
Pat, that is a very good, that's a really, really good brochure.
This has been sent
Yes.
out to every
And you know what?
high school.
Mary Ann is the person that called me, and his wife, Mary Ann Fusco. And I said to her, you know, Mary Ann, because she edits, she's an editor, I need your help on the words that you have in the folder. So she helped with the editing of the words, and oh gosh, she was really helpful. So, I'm thankful to Mary Ann for that a lot. Pat, you're doing a good job.
Well, listen,
We're
you're an
gonna
inspiration.
help.
Believe me.
We're gonna help.
You've been an inspiration for us to continue.
Something is going to happen. Something good is going to happen, Pat.
Anyway, I was going to say, I certainly, this has gone out to every high school and college in New Jersey. an introduction to all the guidance counselors, and we've gotten orders. We're distributing this as part of the movement. And Senator Loretta Weinberg from Bergen County is in favor of supporting the bill. They're working on the language right now, the committee, and hopefully it'll be introduced sometime soon. But it's a struggle because honestly, I'm a politician as well. I've just been elected.
What was I saying about politicians?
That's okay. I'm a politician as well, so I'm dealing with politicians in my own circle, and I've been elected to local office, not state or federal, but local office. But I see the way I'm treated, and as a victims' rights advocate, okay, not as a politician. Now that may change, okay, because all of a sudden you're treated at a different level. So I'm looking forward to working, but I'm certainly, obviously I'm going to continue to promote this as an elected official.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Does anybody have anything?
Any other questions?
And remember, you can call me, you can write to me, you can email to me, don't think bother me. If you for something for a class, if you need it, psychology, law, whatever,
You have enough copies, Mr. Busko, to distribute?
A few, there's a few. This side of the room is winning.
I bought for a handful. I didn't know how much of a, I honestly.
How many have about 30?
But we can, I certainly, I can.
When it comes to raising money, but then issues that relate to humanity, like immigration, all these things, it's more like you can do this by yourself.
Come on, guys, you're all together, let me get a picture.